Aloha! You are listening to Inside the Desert Oasis Room, episode number 234. This podcast is brought to you by Don the Beachcomber. Enjoy classic dining and cocktails in a tropical exotic setting. Now open in beautiful Madeira Beach, Florida. Can't get to Florida? Get a piece of Don the Beachcomber from the comfort of your own home. Visit shop.donbeachcomber.com to see brand new merch like collectible tiki mugs, postcards, magnets, stickers, t-shirts, hats, and more. That's shop.donbeachcomber.com. This podcast is brought to you by Deadhead Rum. Fine single blended rums made with sugarcane sourced from the jungles of Chiapas. Master blended by 43-year rum veteran Jorge Perez, the most decorated master blender in all of Mexico. For more information, check out their website at deadheadrum.com. On this episode, we chat with artist David Gambale. You might have seen David's work at TikiCon or other Tiki events, but his most prolific piece was the album cover for License to Ill for the iconic hip-hop trio, the Beastie Boys. Learn about David's journey from art school through today and hear the fascinating story of how he got hired to paint the License to Ill album cover and what became of the art after the album became one of hip-hop's most iconic releases. As always, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did bringing it to you. If you'd like to follow our adventures, check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/PolynesianPop, where we chronicle events, bars, travel spots, cocktail tutorials, and more. And if you enjoy this podcast, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/PolynesianPop, where membership grants you early access to podcasts and videos, front-of-the-line privileges to new merch releases, as well as exclusive content, meetups, and screen credits. Alrighty, let's get into this. Make yourself a cocktail and join us inside the Desert Oasis Room. And give it up for my friend David Gambale.
Desert Oasis Room.
Sean always gets it. Go ahead.
All right, welcome to the Desert Oasis Room. David Gambale? Gambale. I knew I was going to say that wrong, even though you told me how to say it at the beginning. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
For our listeners. Yeah, I'm excited.
Well, this is the first time I've been to the Desert Oasis Room. I've seen it online so many times, and it's better in person, and it's amazing.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
I really love it. I may never leave this spot.
I love how you say...
I may take this microphone home with me.
There you go. He might steal a mug.
Yeah.
Like we do at all of our bars, right?
I've already got two in my pockets. Yeah.
There we go. I love how you said, it looks bigger online.
Yes, it does. That's what she said.
Everyone always says it, yeah. There's a joke in there about objects in mirror are larger than they appear.
That's right.
Right. But I'm glad to finally have you on here. I love having creatives on here because, doing what we do, right? Doing what I do, I consider this also the work of someone that's more creatively inclined because I'm not sitting at a cubicle for 8 hours or, crunching a spreadsheet or anything like that, right? So we're kind of doing something that's outside the box. And when I learned a little bit about your background...
Yes.
I thought, I got to have that guy on the podcast, and I vehemently pursued you.
I'm honored.
Let's start first, though.
Yeah.
Before we get into your background, let's talk about what you're doing today, your art in the tiki world.
Oh, all right.
Let's talk about that.
I dabble. Let me put it this way.
I love it.
I don't do it really to pay the bills or any of that stuff.
Okay.
I'm not trying to make a living off of it. It's kind of a side hustle.
Okay.
And it keeps me creative and it keeps me busy at home. I like doing it, because I've always been into the tiki thing. So, and people seem to like it.
I love it.
My stuff, I go by Lanai Tiki Decor.
Okay.
And I also do some black velvet things. And in that realm, I go by the amazing name of Leonardo de Velvet.
How long did it take you to think of that one?
Well, that's a good question. I was obviously ripping on
Leonardo DiCaprio?
Da Vinci and DiCaprio.
DiCaprio?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, Dave is in there. The letters Dave is in there.
Oh, in Da Vinci.
Well, in De Velvet.
In De Velvet. Oh, yeah, and
So,
that too.
It's kind of clever,
So
right?
is it De Velvet like Da Vinci, or De Velvet like a Hawaiian guy saying the velvet, like De Velvet?
Yeah, all
Or
that.
is it both?
I don't know. It all works, right?
It
all works.
Yeah.
So anyway, I honestly,
See what I mean by
I don't
creatives?
remember
Creatives.
I don't remember how that came up, but when it did, I said, I like that. Let's go with that. And it's funny too. I mean, I don't take too much of this stuff very seriously, so
the stuff that I've seen is, I think I've only seen the velvet stuff.
yeah.
That's the stuff where you do like a tiki mask, and you have like two colors, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I make tiki masks. I don't carve them. People think I carve them, and I'm happy that people think I carve them, but I actually construct them out of pieces of wood. Okay. So I will draw something out, and I will cut pieces of wood, put it together flat, if this is going to make any sense, and then I rip it at an angle so it kind of creates the mask thing.
Yeah.
Put it back together like that.
Got it.
Then I kind of, sand them or carve a little bit in there. And then I paint them in what I would call the black velvet style, with the dark. So I paint them black, completely black at first.
Right.
And then, the high contrast. I'm always thinking like it's a still night with a full moon coming down in the dark, in the jungle or something, on the one side. So you kind of have that moonlight hitting on one side. And then on the other side, I usually do red, as if there's a fire pit or a volcano on that side. It's classic black velvet style.
Yeah.
And then I mount these things on a piece of black velvet and find a nice vintage frame, and there you go.
Yeah, that's the stuff I've seen. It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
I got to get something from you the next time you're at
We'll make a trade,
at a show or something.
I'll take home
we'll
this
do the trade.
microphone, and you can have a black velvet.
I love that. He immediately said, "We'll make a trade." I love that. We were talking about that.
We were
earlier.
talking about trades
off mic.
I mean, it's fun to make money and have make money and go to Hawaii or something, right? But it's also cool with other tiki people to say, "Hey, how about a black velvet? And I dig your gold statue over here or something."
Oh, he wants the gold statue.
No, I know that's off limits.
That one's off limits.
That's a whole other podcast.
That one's got lava around it. You can't touch that one.
Yeah.
That has some special meaning to me because that came from my very good friends, the Moffats.
I never heard of them. Who are those?
Oh yeah, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like.
Oh, I've heard of those guys. I'm not. I don't know.
That's from the Gold Breakfast.
Oh, that was amazing.
The Gold Breakfast.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, Sean is like got some. What's some? How do I say this?
Yeah. He's got some. He's an impressive.
Well, he has. I love his shoes.
Package.
I love his shoes. His shoes were fantastic.
Yeah.
But he has some big cojones for wearing that bodysuit.
Yes.
The gold bodysuit that enhances every curve.
I have still not slept right since I saw that.
Right.
Seriously.
I was thinking like, oh,
it's so disturbing.
I didn't know he was expecting.
So
I wish they'd told me. I would have gotten him a gift.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I shouldn't laugh because I'm probably farther along in my pregnancy.
Yeah.
Than he is.
God. You know, they were encouraging all of us to get the gold suit.
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
Yeah. I got a painter's outfit one time. I think it's a painter's outfit or a bug spraying outfit or whatever, because I dressed up as Walter White or Jesse Pinkman.
Oh, nice.
From Breaking Bad, right? So I put the respirator on my head.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And I got this like a bug spraying outfit. It's yellow with the zipper.
Yeah.
And it wasn't skin tight, but it showed enough.
Or too much.
Yeah,
depending on how you look at it.
Enough or too much. But let me ask
you. Did you
pull
up in an old beat up RV? That would have been.
I didn't. I don't have an old beat up RV,
Yeah.
but I do have an old beat up regular car.
Okay, you showed up in that.
Yeah. The problem. I don't know if it's a problem, but the problem with these modern day cars is they're more reliable than ever before.
Yeah.
And I don't park my car in the garage, so the paint fades and oxidizes long before the engine
Well, you
goes
do
out.
live in the desert here. Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
And so the paint looks horrible, but the car is still it's somewhat reliable. I'm at about 240,000 miles now. It's starting to I have a feeling it's just going to die anytime now. But
that you got a lot out of it already.
I did. But the good thing about having a car that looks like shit is that no one's going to break into it.
You don't care. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're going to look at it. They're not going to think there's anything in there.
I like that.
So
some people get their car detailed every week. I'm like, why? I'm going to spill coffee in it
right now.
6 minutes. Yeah,
right. Right.
Anyway.
So let me ask you a question as an artist. Do you have a studio at your house?
No. And I wish
you don't.
Did. No.
So how often do you make art?
Okay, here's my setup, Adrian, because...
And do you have to set up and break down every time you do something? So that could be a pain in the ass.
That's a good question. Yes and no. Mostly no. But I have a tiki bar at my house as well. It's called the Lanai, and that's named after the Lanai in San Mateo. Right, because I grew up in the Bay Area. And I went to the Lanai both as a kid with my parents, but then there was a little overlap there where I would go as an adult. So I actually had drinks in the Lanai.
Nice.
It was a phenomenal place.
Do you know the tiki that was out in front?
Yeah.
I know who has it.
Really?
Yeah, it's in his house.
Oh, my God. Because there's another, I don't know if we're talking about the same one. Because right next to the Lanai, so the Lanai, for those of you that may not know, look it up. There was a big thing on Tiki Central years ago about it.
Yeah.
But
he made a post there showing how it was transported to his house.
Okay.
And then I'd been to his house more than once.
Okay.
And saw it.
Okay, but there was a liquor store right next to the... So there was a bar, a restaurant, and a liquor store, all the Lanai. And there was also an awesome tiki in front of the liquor store. So I don't know which one we're
That's a great question. About. You know what? That one would probably...
Because the liquor store lasted longer than the place did. They tore down the place, but the liquor store stayed as a liquor store for, I don't know the dates or the time frame or whatever. So anyway, but the real crown jewel of that place was this backlit, panoramic glass mural thing that was freaking mind-boggling, the way this thing was made, as an artist looking at it, going, oh my God, this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've heard how this is how I remember it worked, okay? But, I was always drinking and who knows what was going on. I believe it was either glass or even maybe curved glass. This is behind the bar, okay? Huge. I mean, maybe 8-10 feet long or something.
It's got to be wider than 10 feet.
Yeah, because that bar was pretty big,
Yeah.
you know. And, you know, whatever, 5 feet tall or something. So it was this panoramic view. And
Was it as big as Sean's shoes?
yes, it was. It was. Oh, his shoes.
His shoes,
That's right.
yeah.
So,
Because at the gold party,
for those of you in the audience that weren't there,
at the gold party, he kept everybody.
he kept saying,
telling, like,
check
"Look
out
at
my shoes.
Yeah.
And I missed it the first
Do you like my
15
shoes?
times
Do you
he
like my
asked me to
shoes?
look at his shoes, you know. Anyway,
Well, you know, in
he
all
was
fairness,
trying to get us to look down at
in all fairness,
another.
the shoes were blinking different colors.
That's right.
So
I
they
was
were
like, okay,
distracting.
shoes. I've seen them.
Yeah.
Kids wear them at Disneyland. I seen them. You know.
I mean,
What
if
do
he
you-
really wanted
Yeah.
people to look,
Yeah.
he could have said, "Have you seen my hog?"
Yes, exactly.
He's got a motorcycle, guys.
Yeah,
We're talking about his
that's
motorcycle.
right. All right, where was I? So this
glass.
giant glass thing, I think it was glass. So it was backlit, you know. So behind that, it was kind of like a, you know, what do they call those things where there's, you go to the
Like a
Natural Museum and you
Shadowbox?
see a,
diorama?
yeah, kind
Diorama.
of like a diorama, exactly. So behind that was some sort of beautiful painted sunset beach scene, like a, you know, tropical beach setting kind of vibe, right? And it was beautifully done, but here was the kicker of the whole thing. They had some kind of light, you know, electrical light thing going on back there. Don't ask me how it worked, because I can't even imagine how this thing worked.
Right.
So there was a sky with kind of like, you know, clouds, and, you know, this is on the ocean, you know, and this fucking giant picture would go from daylight, okay? So it'd be kind of, you know, like almost like morning, and then daylight, and then slowly, really slowly, go, you know, down to like dusk, sunset, and then dark. And the thing that I always remember is when it got to dark, this little fire, like a like a bonfire would start on the beach, and it was like, and you're in there drinking and looking. You're not watching it constantly, because I'm guessing the whole cycle would be like, you know, 10 minutes or 12 minutes or something. So,
God,
I mean, it
that's
was this phenomenal piece
so
of art. So,
cool.
Adrian, let me tell you a story about this. So, I was living on the peninsula at the time. I'm driving down El Camino Real, which is what it was on. And I was on a motorcycle, and I'm driving past, and they're fucking tearing the thing down as I'm driving by. You know, the big machines, you know, whatever they were using, I can't really remember. And I'm like, no, because I hadn't been there in a while or something. This is in 87 or 8 or something like that. And the first thing I thought of is, what are they going to do with this glass mural thing or whatever, you know? And I never found out. I don't know. You
It
guys
probably
are
got
more into this.
demolished.
It
You know,
probably
this-
did. It probably did.
It's such a shame, because you
Such a
see
shame, I'm
something
telling
like
you.
that.
I'm
and
sitting
there's-
here fumbling trying to describe it.
It's not.
You just had to see
no.
the
You
fucking
described
thing,
it
you know?
really great. The thing is that it's not just the artistry that was lost. It was the innovation,
Yeah.
the engineering,
All of that.
all of it.
All of
Right?
it. This thing had all of that, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What a shame, you know.
so-
And I think about like all the places that were like that,
Right.
that just got torn down.
I happen to know that
Because-
one because I
because-
grew up there. Who knows what else was out there
And
like
we
that,
we
you
don't
know?
see places being built like this anymore. So
Yeah.
that's what makes it such a shame.
Yeah.
You know, God, it's such a bummer. But, you know, when you see something like that as an artist, so the average person may look at that and just be like, oh, that's pretty cool. Look, it's nighttime now.
Right.
But as an artist,
Right.
you see it in a different perspective.
Because I'm thinking, how
do they do that,
this,
right?
yeah?
Does it ever make you want to make something like that yourself?
Well, yeah, but I could never figure out what this thing was. And look, you have to, you know, all of our styles or talents, if you will, are limited. I would just
100%.
yeah,
but I mean,
can't look at some, yes.
you're still
I could never do something like that.
You still, as a creative, get influenced. You know,
sure.
I mean, like
Sure.
doing what I do too. If I hear or see something that's in the genre of what I do,
Right.
a lot of times I'll be like, "Oh, I want to try that.
I want to try that.
I want to
Yeah,
try
I'm
that."
the
Like,
same way.
like
I'm the
I've
same
done
way.
I've done a Hot Wings episode.
Yeah.
Because I saw it on YouTube and
Right.
thought, "Oh, I want to do one of those."
Well,
and
that's
I
the other
did one.
thing about when you're using the word artist and creative. You know, I don't know. Sometimes I get uncomfortable with that. You know, yes, I feel like a creative person, but everything's creative. You know, like you're saying, Hot Wings. Chefs are creative. You
100%.
know, writers are creative. You know, so it's not just like, you know, painting is an artist, or you know, everything's an artist. You know, you know, influencers these days are probably some sort of artist thing. You know. So
Right.
podcasts are artists. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
There
yeah.
you go.
By the
Anyway,
way,
you know what you asked me before we went on this rampage here? You asked me if I had a place to work.
yes,
That's what the question
like
was.
a dedicated
Yeah,
spot.
yeah. The reason I went off on the tiki bar. Okay, so I live in a suburban house, kind of, you know, not exactly like yours. It's one story. Anyway, and my tiki bar is in, I'm going to guess, about 2/3 to 3/4 of my garage.
Okay.
Okay? So the other quarter, the other remaining part of the garage, right next to the tiki bar, is my, you know, studio shop or whatever you
Okay.
call it.
Okay.
It's a disaster. It's dusty. It's sawdusty. It's unorganized. I can't, you know, I see some like artist creatives on Instagram, and they're so organized.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
mug makers seem to be organized. You know, some of these guys
some
are. Yeah.
So like Van Tiki,
That's exactly what I was
His-
thinking of,
his-
because he's up my way.
yeah, his workspace is immaculate.
It's like my dentist office or something.
exactly
you
like
know?
your dentist's office.
Yeah.
But you know, if you're working in ceramics
Yeah.
and clay and mud and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
I've seen mug makers spaces
Yeah.
that are very, very, very. Very dusty, and it's
Yeah.
just the nature of the
Right.
media that they're
Right.
working with.
That's how I feel, and ultimately, as you know, as I got comfortable with, you know, whatever, however I do something, it's just the way I work. I'm actually, you know, it works for me.
What's the media that you work in the most?
Well, out there, I'm cutting wood, cutting and sanding.
So yeah, so then
and
you're gonna
all that.
have like
Yeah.
sawdust
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah.
Do you use like what do they call this? Like a sawdust management system?
Oh hells no!
yeah. So then it gets everywhere.
Yeah,
and sawdust
I-
is magnetic. It'll
Yeah.
stick to
Anything.
everything.
So you know, every once in a while, I stop and say, I gotta clean this place up. You know, so I'll vacuum and sweep and put all the tools where they're supposed to be.
Right.
So I don't spend 20 minutes looking for a screwdriver or something.
Right.
You know.
Right.
But anyway, I've accepted the fact that that's how I'm gonna work. You know. So anyway, that's. So you asked me if I have to set up or break down. I gotta pull the table saw out
Yeah,
to
yeah.
get to the table saw, that kind of stuff. Everything else is kind of all right there. And I also make lamps, like you know, you're a fantastic lamp maker
Oh,
too,
thanks.
Adrian. Again, those of you listening, this is the first time I've been here, so I'm oogling at Adrian's lamps up here.
Appreciate that.
So that's just, I don't know. I wouldn't call it too dusty. You got to cut some wood and
Well-
cut bamboo and stuff like that.
I ask about the space because. So I love walking at artist studios.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the work that they do that doesn't get sold, or a lot of the work that they do where they're just kind of experimenting or playing around or whatever, and it just ends up, you know, being
over
put on
there,
the
yeah.
side or whatever.
Yeah, I got a
And then
lot
you
of that.
walk through a space of a creative person,
and it's very whimsical, right?
Yeah.
So, for example,
That's a good way.
for
of putting
example,
it.
like if you go to Ken Rizik's art studio,
Oh, yeah, I
there are
can't imagine.
paintings everywhere.
Yeah.
And things are, I mean, other things are painted.
Yeah.
Whether they're tiki mugs or whatever you can think of. Like he paints everything.
Everything.
And there are giant canvases, small canvases, drawings and sketches, and this just all strewn about.
That's awesome.
And it's just so awesome to walk through.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, what a fun environment to live in or to be in all the time, to be surrounded with art.
Yeah.
You know, because we buy a piece from our favorite friends, our favorite artists, and we say like, I'm going to support this person or I love their art. And you buy a piece and you have this one piece that you're really happy with. But then when they go home, it's all over their house.
Yeah.
You know? So
Yeah, I'm not quite that prolific, you know. But
as an artist,
yeah.
and I'm sure like when you're working on stuff,
yeah.
you have stuff there that just never got sold.
Oh
So
yeah.
you still have that there.
There's something
Do
everywhere.
you ever
yeah.
get attached to anything that you work on?
No, not really. Not really.
Okay, that's interesting. 'Cause,
Yeah,
a lot of artists say
I did
no.
when I was younger. I did, I did I guess we're getting to that, but I did commercial art
Right.
and paintings and stuff when I was younger, and I used to get more attached. But later on, my other philosophy is, oh well, if I made one, I could make another
make
if
another
I really
one, yeah.
wanted to, So I don't get attached too much,
I've
And
heard that from other artists.
also, if it really means something to somebody, that's almost better than me having it. You know what I mean?
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard, like, for example, Bosco has said to me, he's like, no, I don't have time to get attached to my work. After
Yeah.
I finish it, I got to get right on to the next one.
Yeah.
Because it's how he makes a living. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah,
So-
I'm not really. It's not that I'm trying to make a living at it. But again, those of you out there that want something, I do like having a side hustle because I look at it as kind of bonus money to, like I said, take a trip to Hawaii or something like that.
Right.
Where you don't have to dip into other, and
Right,
everybody's
right.
got their
Right.
budget situations, whatever. But that's kind of how I look at my thing,
Right.
So, but I've also kind of accepted. You're talking about somebody like Ken. I don't know him, but he's just prolific. The guy must have a marker in his hand 24 hours a day or something.
Like his art is.
Yeah, it's all. It's,
When I see like how, I don't know if busy is the right word. There's a lot of things going on in his art.
Oh yeah.
I look at all the detail and I
Yeah.
think to myself, where does all this come from?
Yeah.
And then I look at the piece as a whole and I think, man, what's going on in this guy's head?
I know,
It's
right?
like-
Because I'm guessing that is like improvisational jazz or something. The way he approaches that stuff. Because like you're saying, there's so many little things going on in there. The other thing I've gotten comfortable with, I'll go out there and kind of work intense for a short period of time, like cut and dry. Trying to get something started usually, and then I'm like, that's it, I'm done. I'll go in the house, have a sandwich, sit around and do nothing for 3 hours, and then maybe go back to it. I can't. I don't want it to be a production line kind of thing. Like,
Got it.
I'm going to work
because
10 hours today out there.
It turns to
you
work
know.
when you do that.
Yeah, exactly. So
So-
I'm trying to keep it fun and fresh and, sort
Yeah.
of. I don't want it ever to be, I don't want to go out there. Although where I live in Vancouver, Washington. When it's cold out there, because like I said, this is in the garage, I'm much less excited about going out there when it's cold.
Sure.
I should be living down here in the Desert Oasis room is where I
Right.
should be living.
So the main thing that I want to talk to you about,
Yes, sir.
I don't know if we should get to that now. I do also want to ask about your artistic influences, where those came from. Do you want to talk about that now, or do we want to talk about this main thing that I want to talk to you about?
Well, they kind of tie together, I guess.
Okay, so let's.
So, just quickly, I was always kind of my brother used to draw. He used to copy cartoony stuff out of Mad Magazine when we were kids. My brother.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I was watching him, and I said, "That's cool. I can do that." So then I started drawing Don Martin characters and stuff like that. That's the earliest memory I have of being, an artist, basically copying Don Martin, And then I remember getting some attention when in school, if I could draw something and girls liked it. I was like, "Hey, I like this,"
Yeah. Did you used to draw the chipmunk in the back of the comic book?
Yeah, right. That
it says
one.
if you could draw this.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that. I do remember that. I probably did.
I don't know how many times I tried to draw that thing. I could never
right.
draw it. And then I would watch Tom Hatton draw Popeye.
Yeah.
On Saturday morning.
Yeah, I remember that too.
Before commercial break, he would draw it on a sketch pad or with like a marker.
Right.
And I used to marvel at how good he was.
How did he do that? Yeah, right. So anyway, and I had some kind of affinity, might be the right word, to all this stuff. So somebody gave me a little set of oil paints, I think, for my 11th birthday or something. I did a seascape. I copied something, I'm sure, a seascape, and my grandmother loved it. She had it at her house. So, it just became something I did. Fast forward, I went to art school at the Academy of Art in San Francisco.
Oh.
But I wanted to make a living at it.
That's awesome.
So I wasn't like some trippy artist that wanted to change the world or anything like that. I wanted to do this as a living. So I was focused on illustration. I think my degree was actually, illustration. I think that's what it was.
Okay.
I think. Anyway, so I started doing commercial art. A lot of the bread and butter stuff in those days was magazine articles. Before digital of any kind, right? So I got some work in San Francisco a little bit, but pretty much right after I graduated the Academy of Art, I took off for New York because New York was that was the place to go if you were serious about doing commercial art, And I won this scholarship thing, which sent me to a what do they call that? Kind of a retreat kind of thing, like a summer. Anyway, it was through the Society of Illustrators in New York. So I won this scholarship. It was like a symposium kind of thing, but it was a working, learning thing that lasted like 3 weeks or something. We were in some college in Tarrytown, New York. So that I met a bunch of East Coast people because I was a West Coast guy. I grew up in San Bruno in the Bay Area, and I met some New York guys, and I was like, oh, this is where I want to go. And one guy said, come and live with me. I got an apartment on West 72nd Street. Because how do you, as a kid, how do you move to New York?
Yeah.
It was like.
That's how it happens.
Yeah.
It's always with a friend that's like, nice enough to get you started.
Yep. And so.
Until you figure it out for yourself.
That was my foot in the door to actually move there, And then him and me, we outgrew that place real fast because it was ridiculous. It was basically a studio, and me and this guy were living in there. It was weird. So anyway, him and me and a third guy said, let's find a bigger place. And we found a cool place down in the East Village, which was kind of hip, kind of dangerous, but pretty hip at that time.
Right.
This is the early 80s. And for those of you that are dating me out there, not dating and
I know what you mean.
That was pretty funny. Hey, that was a funny one, Adrian.
That was a funny one.
Anyway, blah 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 blah. So I go to New York, and I'm a freelance illustrator. I'm doing magazine covers. Covers. I mean, I'm doing magazine articles, sometimes covers. So the big money's in advertising, so every once in a while you get a real big job in advertising. It paid 10 times as much as magazines, So those are the ones you really wanted to get. But that was kind of for the seasoned veteran type illustrators. They didn't want to fuck around with kids, right out of college with advertising usually. But I did some cool stuff. I did a portrait of Chrissie Hynde for Rolling Stone magazine.
Oh, okay.
I worked for Penthouse. I had a little blurb somebody had a little blurb in Penthouse, and I did a little illustration every month for Penthouse for like a couple of years,
Okay.
Lots of magazines, whatever you could get. It was trying to make a living, hustling your portfolio around and just trying to eke out a living doing that stuff. So I was in New York for about 4.5 years, but I'm pretty much a West Coast guy, so I was looking to find a way to move back to San Francisco,
Okay,
or back to the West Coast anyway, and San Francisco. My family was still in San Bruno, so I pulled the trigger on that and came back. I had a rep in New York, so I still was getting work
Right,
through her
right.
in New York, and then I got a rep in San Francisco. So I was, this is I'm talking, we're getting to something here. I'm talking about like 6, 7, 8 years of this, so anyway, the other, before you ask me anything else, some of those jobs I was mentioning was a collaboration with a friend of mine who also went to the Academy of Art, who also moved to New York. And he was working for Stiff Records in New York. Now, Stiff was kind of a punk-ish London label.
Okay.
And during that period, they started Stiff America. And Steve Byron is his name. We'll get to him later, too. He was working there as kind of a staff designer or something like that, doing stuff for him. For them. And I would collaborate with him on stuff.
Got it.
So he was kind of had his foot in the door in the music
Got
industry.
it. Okay.
Hint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
so let me say what
Yeah.
I wanted to get to. So I'm going to tell
I'll shut up for a couple
very very short story. It's not a long story.
Yeah.
So back in the day, in the '80s, growing up out here, I've always been a huge fan of music, and just like any kid, in the San Gabriel Valley, we were playing around. Hip hop was a very influential thing in the '80s, right? Its birth of hip hop was in the '80s, and you started seeing bands and rappers and duos and trios and things like that start popping up. And we were playing around with records and DJing, mixing records and playing with turntables and mixers and things like that. I used to spend a lot of time.
I love it.
You spend a lot of time in record stores, and let me tell you something that I look at that my kids will never know the feeling of, which I think is actually such a bummer for them. Is spending a Friday night in a record store for 3 or 4 hours
Doing this.
Yeah. digging through crates, digging
Yeah.
through records, looking at the books, looking at you name it, like Tower Records, for example,
Totally.
was a thing, right?
Yeah.
And I remember it was a Tower Records. I don't remember which one it specifically was. It was in Orange County. I remember walking in, and they used to take record art and they would duplicate it and enlarge it. There was a Tower Records that was on La Brea that was doing that on the outside of the building.
Yeah.
They were taking these LPs and enlarging them, making them giant. This is before digital press.
Right.
So
They had a crew that
people
did
were
those
doing
things.
these.
Yeah.
They were just repainting
Painting
them.
them, yeah.
And I remember walking into a Tower Records in Orange County. I don't remember if it was Costa Mesa or if it was in Orange County. I just remember it was Orange County. And one of my favorite albums was "Licensed to Ill" by the Beastie Boys, and it was an album that when it opened,
Never heard of it.
When it opened, it expanded. Well, let me tell you a little bit about it.
Okay.
The cover expanded, so it had an airplane, and you only saw the tail section on one side. But when you opened the cover, it expanded into showing the whole plane, and this thing was duplicated on the wall, again enlarged,
Right.
but it was done three-dimensionally where they had cut foam core.
Oh.
So
I never saw that.
So this was like,
wow.
It wasn't just a two-dimensional piece of art; it was
Right.
three-dimensional. And I just remember thinking, man, I want that. I want that for my wall. I'd love to have that. I don't know whatever happened to that thing. It was up there for a long, long time.
Wow, Adrian.
And Kevin went.
I never heard about this because the Tower Records in San Francisco did the same thing but it was just a flat, the whole gatefold thing, which was another kind of, upgrade because most album covers are square.
Yeah.
But this one, I drove down there and there it was. And I was like, I felt like,
And
I
thought,
my God, I've hit the big time, man. That's it.
So there you go. So,
Order the yacht and the islands.
So there you go. So there's the reveal.
Yeah.
I learned
Yeah.
that you were the one that painted that.
I did the License to Ill album cover. Yes, sir.
So
how about that?
Man, what a cool thing, because I always loved that cover. There were all these like little things in it, like the thing that said "Eat Me."
Yeah,
right.
I stole that from Animal House. At the end of Animal House, the guy who was like 37 years old and still in college, he had like he was like a biker dude almost. They were like, crashing into a parade or something. They were trying to
so that's gonna be my next
sabotage
question.
Yeah.
What's the symbolism behind the plane?
Well,
crashing?
yeah, over the years, there's been a lot of speculation about that. So a lot of people think it's a joint, like a weed joint being crushed out or something, because it's smoking. It's kind of gone, it's smoldering or whatever. That is not it at all. So we're going to back up just a little bit. Rick Rubin was the producer of this record.
Right.
Rick Rubin was the guy that I spoke. So now I had already moved back to San Francisco. So that's another kind of oddball thing about this. They're such a New York thing, and the Beastie Boys are such New York guys, And I lived in New York, so everybody kind of thought that was the thing. But I had already moved back to San Francisco. So the aforementioned friend of mine that worked for Stiff, Steve Byron, he got a job at Columbia Records as an art director. So he was in charge of art directing this album cover thing.
Got it.
So Rick Rubin had this idea about the airplane, and Steve, this is how I understand it anyway, Steve said, I know a guy that, would be good for this job, I think, So Steve called me, and I've told this story a few times over the years. The phone rings, and I got a job. It was like, oh, great. Yeah, hell yes, So, because I had heard of the Beastie Boys. The Beastie Boys were around when I was living in New York, but they were like a funky punk band.
They did punk before they became hip-hop.
You'd see a flyer, glued on a phone pole or something.
The truth is that when back in the 80s and I had heard of the Beastie Boys, I knew them as a punk band.
Yeah, well,
before I knew them as a hip hop band.
I just knew them as a name on a flyer in the subway or something, So I think the way it went was Steve said, "Hey, you remember the Beastie Boys?" I was like, "Well, yeah, kinda, I guess." I had moved back to San Francisco maybe a year earlier or something like that. And he goes, well, they signed him on Columbia, and they're coming out with like a full record, a LP or whatever. And I was like, well, great, awesome, this is a cool job. But you never know. Was this going to turn into a big
Right.
thing? Was it going to be a
Right.
flop? So for me at that time, right then and there, it was just
another
a job.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to some guy named Rick Rubin. Maybe
you don't know who he is.
Well, I think he'd already been around. I don't know if Run DMC and all that, wasn't he involved with them? He'd been around, but he wasn't the freaking legend he is now or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I was just looking at it as a cool job. I want to do this. Music is awesome, and it was a well-paying job for the time, compared to just doing a magazine page or something like that. So anyway, that's the story of how I got the job. Now the concept, that's what you asked me about. As I understand it, Rick Rubin just kind of told me what he wanted, And as I understand it, it was kind of a joke because the Beastie Boys are funny, and they were pretty funny in those days. Led Zeppelin had kind of the famous rock and roll plane, with all the stuff on it, right? And the legends of all the crazy shit that they did, right? So I think the joke was that here's the Beastie Boys that nobody takes seriously or nobody's heard of, and they got their own plane, but then when you flip the thing open, it's actually a disaster.
Right.
Kind of a gag as I saw it or understood it.
Is that came from Rick Rubin, that concept?
Yes.
Okay.
It did. Yes, and he said to me, this is something I remember very clearly. He goes, "Are you familiar with Led Zeppelin 3 or whatever it is?" I think it's Led Zeppelin 3. And I go, "Well, yeah, I'm a white kid from the suburbs. Of course I am, And he's like, "I want those kind of colors." So this is the Stairway to Heaven album. They call it a couple of different things, I think. But it's got that weird guy with the basket of sticks walking around. It's a weird album cover. But he wanted those colors. He wanted that kind of mood. And he said, "Do you think you could do that?" And those really weren't my kind of colors. I would do much more colorful work.
Right.
Like, artists that I was trying to sort of emulate were like David Hockney and Wayne Thiebaud was my hero. Very kind of bright colors, and reds and yellows and blue shadows and all that kind of stuff. So this was different for me. But I wanted to do this thing. I was like, "Oh, yeah, I could do that. No problem," And I literally had the Led Zeppelin cover next to this thing that I was trying to paint, So anyway, I give the credit to the concept is all Rick Rubin, Oh, geez.
But then everything else came from you.
Well,
So
the plane, the plane, the mountain, and how it was crashed, and all that stuff. That was all me.
So,
and the eat me thing was just a gag that we threw in there,
So how big was the original painting?
It was on a 36. I think they were 36 by 24 illustration board.
Okay.
So not edge to edge, but it was on that. Yeah.
And
there's pictures of it, the actual original art online. If you
there
if
is.
you Google it,
Does
you
it
can
still
see.
exist?
Well, yeah. Now I sold it in 2000. Okay.
Oh, you still had it until then.
I had it till 2000. Yeah.
Oh, so okay.
And I was stupid because I hung it up at a comic book convention once, and I was ready to sell it for like $1,000 or something.
Right.
Now we'll get to a crazy ass story here in a minute, but I had met my wife, and we weren't married yet, but we wanted to buy a house in Las Vegas. And I said, it's time to sell this thing, and I had it on eBay for a while. And nobody wanted to pay the price I wanted.
Right.
But after that, a whole bunch of people were contacting me I don't know how they found me back in those days. Maybe the internet was happening in 2000. I don't know.
So how does this happen? Like when you do the
Yeah.
art, they photograph it
Yeah.
for the album cover.
Yes. Okay.
And that's it. I mean, they photograph it. They're just paying
Yeah.
for
So the
licensing it.
Yeah. The legality part of it, and that's that affects me to this day.
Okay.
And I'll get to that here in a minute, maybe. You sign a contract with a company like, it was some kind of collaboration with Def Jam and Columbia, but I was working for Columbia, CBS Records. So they send me this kind of stock contract, and as a a freelance artist, you sign the thing.
Sure.
You don't say, I want 5 points, or whatever movie
Right.
people do, because they'd say, adios, we'll find some other artist to do this thing. So
Right.
you just do the job, right? You don't know that it's going to turn into this iconic
Sure.
freaking thing that it turned into.
Sure.
So the way it works, the best I can explain it, Adrian, is you do the work. They own the image, okay? They own the rights to. If you want to make a T-shirt out of the thing, you got to pay somebody. You want to make a coffee cup with this thing on it, you got to pay somebody. But the artist owns the original art. So they take it, they photograph it, scan it, whatever was going on in those days, and they sent the artwork back to me. So I own the original art.
But if they own the image,
I can't make T-shirts.
Yeah.
Or coffee mugs out of it either, and that's haunting me to this day.
yeah, because you can't. You almost can't do anything with the original art
can't.
because they own.
They own it.
They own it.
Yeah, it's kind of like
They own the image. They
it's
give you
kind
the
of
art
like
back
when
and-
you write a song and somebody else owns the
Right,
the whole
right.
Michael Jackson, Paul McCartney thing
Right.
or whatever. So it's kind of like that, I suppose you could say. And the problem with that has been there's a gallery in London called Hyper Gallery.
Okay.
And they specifically take rock and roll music artwork, whether it's a painting like I did or photographs or stuff like this, and they get the artists who did it, and they make prints out of it, beautiful, like high quality art prints out of it. The artist signs them, and they sell them. Look it up, ladies and gentlemen. Hyper Gallery in London. Very cool stuff and big time stuff. They have like the guy that took the Pink Floyd flying pig photograph, or stuff like that. Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, David Bowie. They're very English-ish or British or whatever, but they do have American stuff too. They had some cool Blondie stuff. They had who else? I think maybe Tom Petty or something like that. So it's kind of big time stuff. And for years, Adrian, they have been trying to secure the rights to do it, because that's their end of the thing. Is they have to get the legal rights to print these things out and sell them like that. And they're having a hell of a time with it because it's now owned by Universal.
And when they signed
Yeah.
this deal with you, they knew what they were doing. They knew.
Well, yes and no. They, I don't know if they knew it was going to become a big deal.
No, but they knew that if it would, that they
Yeah,
had
that they had
to,
everything.
That
Yeah.
they had to protect
And that was a
themselves in
standard. That was a standard thing.
Sure, yeah.
That's what every
because their lawyers say no. This is how we're going to
Right.
set up this
And
deal.
like I said,
so
unless you're
that
Andy Warhol doing the Rolling Stones cover, as an artist, you can't negotiate this shit. You sign it and do the job if you want it. Or like I said, they'll find somebody else to do it.
yeah.
So anyway, that's where that at. I don't want to sound bitter about it, but it sure would be super cool to do that. I would love to do that, and I think it would be a very popular thing. There's a whole, demographic of, maybe you're one of them, Adrian. That was their shit in 1987.
I am one of them.
Yeah,
100%.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Because so now as a tiki guy,
Yeah,
right? As a tiki guy, I want that same thing right? Whether it's a painting or whatever it is, a print or whatever.
Yeah.
And instead of that Beastie Boys logo on the tail,
Yeah.
I want to have the Desert Oasis Room logo on the
Oh, wow.
tail. Yeah.
That's-
So, you know what I'm saying? So, like,
How'd you think of that, Adrian? Oh my God, that's awesome.
I
Well,
mean-
you know, what's funny about that one is you know, some of you might know Richard Cheese, right?
sure, yeah.
His real name is Mark. Oh, is that a secret? I don't know. Sorry.
I don't think it is.
Sorry,
but
Dick. But no, he's a great guy. He's a great guy, and I didn't know him at all. I had seen him. You ever seen his act?
yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
So funny. But anyway, he calls me out of the blue. I don't know how he tracked me down, and he said, "Dave, he does spoofs of everything,
Sure. Yeah,
right?"
yeah. He
So
takes popular music and turns them into lounge
Right.
songs.
And he does mocky album covers for his CDs.
Okay.
Right? So he hired me to do a mock of myself, which at first I thought, wait a minute, this feels like, one of these one-hit wonder bands that goes back and re-records their same song
Right,
again.
right.
And I was like, what do I care, I'm old enough to not give a shit anymore, So anyway, he did License to Spill.
Okay.
And it was a martini glass because his thing is the lounge guy.
Right. Yeah, it's lounge.
So he called it License to Spill. So I drew this martini glass breaking off into the side of the same, basically the same mountain. I did.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I know you got to. That's out there too.
I'm gonna have to
I have a
look for that.
copy. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Because I was mentioning that I had Led Zeppelin next to me when I was doing the
Yeah.
Beastie Boys thing. Well, I had my own shit next to me when I was doing the Richard Cheese thing.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So that's out there too.
So where did the art end up?
Which one?
The License to Ill.
Oh,
cover.
okay, right. So I sold it to a guy. I was in San Francisco. And my wife and I were going to move to Vegas and buy this house, right? So I sold it to a guy in Boston, and as I remember it, he ran the concession businesses at the place at the Boston Garden where
Right,
the Celtics
right,
played,
right.
And I don't know if it was Fenway Park or whatever, but anyway, that was sort of his business. He sounded like a successful guy,
Mm-hmm.
And he gave me the price that I was
That you
going
wanted,
for.
yeah.
And it was great. So he actually bought some other. I had done some. He said, "What else do you do?" And I sent him some stuff, and I had done this baseball series thing. So he was a sports guy, I think. So he actually bought that and a few other little things from me. And just shipped it all out to him. So that was our down payment on the house, and
Nice.
got us to move. So it was the right thing at the right time for me. I have no regrets about that at all. Now, fast forward a little bit, when Adam Yount, I think that's how you pronounce his name, one of the Beastie Boys died. He died, unfortunately, way too young,
Right.
cancer at
Right.
47 or whatever he was. Juxtapose magazine, which is a cool art magazine.
Right.
They did an entire issue all about the Beastie Boys, which was kind of mind-boggling. But anyway, they contacted me. I did a little interview thing with them, and right after that, so that was out there. And there was some contact thing on there for me, and this guy contacted me who now had it because it had subsequently been sold a couple times.
Okay.
We're talking about 2013, I think.
Yeah.
I had sold it in 2000. Yeah. So, however this works, it had been, I think it was in an auction like at Sotheby's or something.
Right.
So anyway, this guy contacts me, and he's in Ireland now.
Wow.
Okay, but this is now 11 years ago,
Okay.
right? And he says, I actually own that thing, and he was very nice, and he said, this was the coolest thing ever, and it inspires me. And he was a phenomenal artist, this guy, because we exchanged whatever, and I looked at his stuff on Facebook or something, and he was like one of these digital guys that does movie stuff and monsters
Right,
and
right.
science fiction stuff. So I thought, wow, that's really cool, because this guy was super accomplished guy, and he was he wanted to, I'm assuming, spend a whole bunch of money on my thing. So that was kind of very cool. I was kind of honored by that. One other note along those lines. This is only about maybe 3 years ago, Adrian. So I think it was Sotheby's. Somebody sent me, hey Dave, did you see this, right? And I hadn't, right? Sotheby's was doing the very first all hip hop art or all hip hop auction, because it wasn't art. There was like Run DMC's tennis shoes in this thing, this kind of stuff, memorabilia kind of stuff. Okay. And what was in there? Okay, going to back up a little bit. Back in the early '90s, I'm going to be guessing like maybe '94 or something like that. I still own the art, right? It was hanging up in my living room, right, framed up in the living room. So this friend of mine, well, no, my roommate worked with a guy who subsequently became a friend, and he was young, and he called himself the White Delight. I think he had some, I think he had some rap band or something with his black friends or something, And he was a character. And he comes over for whatever reason, I think to see my roommate about work. They were chefs. They were both working at the same restaurant. And his name's Jim, but, well, we're going to get to that here in a minute. He comes over and he's like, hey, cool, man. You got a Beastie Boys poster in here, I'm a big fan or whatever. I'm like, dude, that ain't no poster. That's the original artwork. He's like, what? And so we became friends. We became pretty close friends at one time. This is in California before I moved to Vegas. So one day, I don't know. He was over. I don't know how this came about, but I had some sketches that I had done for Rick Rubin, for this thing that I had sent back and forth. There were little notes on them like, make this bigger, whatever it said. Make this dark. Whatever they said, I don't even remember, right? So this was like a half-size sketch, just black and white, kind of the preliminary sketch. I don't know how many of these I did. I probably did a few. That's kind of how you do a commercial art piece like that. And I just gave it to this guy, Jim.
Oh my God!
I just say, hey, you can have this.
Wow!
It was like in my garage, getting dusty or something. I mean, what do you do with this stuff? Adrian?
Yeah.
The thing. Look, it went to number one.
Sure.
That record, but it didn't really. I didn't feel like it had this kind of iconic status that it kind of has become.
I was gonna say
since then. This is like the early '90s. This is only like whatever 5-6 years after the thing came out. So it didn't feel the same to me like it does now. I don't know if but I was still stupid. Don't misunderstand.
No,
I'm
not
an
at all.
idiot.
Well, the White Delight made out.
Yeah. Oh well, no, he didn't.
Okay.
We're getting to that because this, like I said, this is only about 3 years ago.
Real quick, is this the crazy story earlier that you said, oh, I got a crazy story? Is this it?
Maybe. Well, I have a whole bunch of them.
All right,
We're going to be here all night.
All right.
This is one of them for sure. All right. So that was in the 90s, right? To tell you the truth, I kind of forgot about it,
Yeah.
Okay. Longer. 24, 5 years later, Jim, who, I kind of lost touch with him, we would hang out in California, but, I got married, had a kid, life changes, right?
Yeah.
He tracks me down again. He says, Dave, I want to sell this sketch, and I was like, oh, well, okay, I said, look it, Jim, I gave the fucking thing to you. You can do whatever you want with it.
Right.
No. I'm going to sell it. I want to sell it. I'm going to figure out how to do it. and we'll split the money. And I said, Jim, you do whatever you want, 50-50, 20-10, or 90-10, I don't care.
Right.
No, you don't owe me anything because I gave the thing to you.
Right.
I mean,
right.
As I might have been stupid.
That's the noble thing
That's
to do.
the thing to do. What am I going to
yeah.
do? Take the guy to court over it or something,
Which people would do.
Yeah, they would, right. But, that's not me, and, I wasn't going to do that. Okay, so, so we had a couple of back and forths about this, and in fact, some guy contacted me to find out if the thing was legit,
was authentic,
right? And I said, yeah, I did that, and I gave it to Jim. Okay. Then Jim ends up on, what's the show called? Not the Antiques, right? Pawn Stars.
Pawn Stars.
Jim was on Pawn Stars with this thing. Okay,
wow. Okay.
And the Pawn Stars guy was like, "Yeah, this is pretty cool. This is pretty cool." I'm gonna say, and they gave their little spiel. I didn't necessarily agree with what they were saying, and they said, I think it's gonna be, I think they kind of give you an offer, and they said, we think it's worth about $5,000 to $6,000, so we'll offer you $3,000 or whatever, however they work, right? And Jim declined on it. He said, "No, I think it's worth more," or whatever. I only saw it once, and by this point, I was, I was up to my neck with this whole story, right? So, anyway, it went something like that. All right, gonna fast forward here a little bit, Adrian. I don't hear from Jim for a while. Okay, I didn't know what was going on. I'm very close with the aforementioned roommate. I'm still like really super good friends with him. And I was talking to him sometime after that, and I go, "Whatever happened to Jim and the Beastie Boys thing, And Keith is his name. Keith goes, "I think I heard he sold the thing." And I go, "Oh, really?" So much for my cut, Right. And again, I wasn't going to track him down. It was so be it, whatever, right? So I'm going to fast forward from there a little bit, Adrian. Now somebody else sends me, "Hey, Dave, did you see this thing? The auction, the first hip-hop auction that I mentioned earlier.
Right.
My thing is in there."
Okay.
Okay. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe he didn't sell it. Maybe he hooked up with Sotheby's, and they're this is his thing. Turns out, okay, I'm going to try to tell it to you this way. So this is I didn't even know this kind of stuff existed. They're having this auction, and it's just like eBay. I don't know if any of you out there have watched these things. You can, there's an end date and an end time.
Sure.
And you can watch it live on, as the price is changing and stuff, you know. So when somebody told me about this, I found it, and it was 3 weeks. It was going to be on there for 3 weeks or something. Okay, so I'm making that up, but whatever it was quite a long time. And it said starting. They give an estimate,
right?
And it said the same exact thing that the Pawn Stars said, $5,000 to $6,000.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it. Okay, let's see. Let's watch this. And at this point, I didn't know if it was Jim doing this or not, right?
Or if somebody had bought it from him.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay. So I'm watching this thing. It's and I think somebody bid $5,000. It's stuck at $5,000 for a week and a half.
Right.
And then it's getting closer to the end date. Boom! It's at $9,000 or something. I go, "Oh my God! Look at this thing. Somebody's bid $9,000 on the thing." Now it's the last fucking day of this thing. Now I'm obsessed with this, I'm checking it every 20 minutes, So I'm watching this thing, Adrian. Oh my God. 9,000. 17,000.
Wow.
27,000.
Wow.
Okay. I'm watching this thing. I'm going, okay. And again, is this Jim? Is this not Jim?
Right.
Okay. I'm watching the thing, and now we're getting down to it. And maybe this is a little different than eBay. At the very end, the last 10 seconds, the thing was going up $10,000 every fucking 10 seconds.
Wow.
So they would extend the end time.
Right.
They didn't end it when they
Right,
did. They
right,
kept
right.
extending the end time.
Right.
40, 50, 60, 70.
Holy moly.
Okay, the thing, so it finally ended $136,000 for the sketch. It's a black and white sketch of this fucking thing.
Wow.
I was like, oh my God. So my genius friend, I'm an idiot. Jim is a bigger idiot because he had sold it to some other guy for $6,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this other guy knew what he was doing. He got hooked into this auction at Sotheby's, and he's the guy that sold it for $136,000.
Wow.
Yeah. For a little pencil sketch of an airplane squashing into a mountain. You know?
That's crazy.
Right?
How does a
I don't know, Adrian. I don't know how any of it works, obviously.
No, what I was going to
But I
ask
love
was
this drink.
What thanks. What I was going to ask is how does Sotheby's authenticate that? If you're not involved with that.
Yeah, that's a good question because they never contacted me.
You know? I mean
Yeah.
like you said somebody else contacted you to ask
Somebody
you.
else that wanted to buy it from Jim contacted me. So maybe
Right.
that was good enough for them or something. You
Or
know?
maybe they were posing as somebody just to
Yeah.
You know what I
So
mean?
you're saying I got duped. Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying
Yeah.
is that like who's to say that Jim has the original, faked a copy, sold that to this
Right.
dude, and this dude is the one who sold it to Sotheby's.
Right,
or
right.
Sold it through Sotheby's. Like I would
Yeah.
think that Sotheby's would have a more diligent authentication process
Right.
in place
Right.
for especially collectibles like that.
Right, and
That
to
are
be
gonna
honest,
bring, like, that
you know,
kind of
to
money.
be real honest here, somebody could have sketched what I sketched easily.
That's
you
what
know?
I mean.
You know, but anyway, it was the thing. It was mine. So if
Sure.
whatever that
sure.
means,
Yeah.
you know.
Wow.
So that made me think. This was the sketch. What is the original worth now?
Right.
You know,
Right.
I don't
Right.
know if the Ireland guy still has it. Because that's now 11 years ago. So who
But
knows
you know
where
what? So
it is.
there's two trains of thought here, because the first one could be like, well, that was just the sketch. Here's the original artwork. But also, the original artwork has been duplicated millions of times.
Yeah.
So the sketch is really unique. So
That's true.
there's two trains of thought there.
Yeah,
What's going to bring? Not what's going to bring more value. What is actually more valuable
Yeah.
to the person that beholds it, right? Because
Yeah.
it's all in the beholder,
Yeah.
right? So,
Well, yeah. I don't know. But, you know, you got to think that the original artwork, you know, paint
100%.
on, is you know, I don't even, you know, want to think about it. But anyway, it's a, look it, on the one hand, it's an honor. It's amazing that this, you know, a piece of, you know, a painting that I did, you know, is that big a deal. It's very cool. I mean, it's the coolest thing, right?
Yeah.
You know, on the other hand, it's been a little frustrating how the sort of commercial art business works, you know, operates, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
but,
well,
you know,
I
I
mean-
made mistakes. I've said that 10 times
No,
here
I
now.
mean, you know, in the end, it's worth what someone's willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
But that's what that guy was willing to pay for it.
Right.
And where do we go from here? Does
What-
it go
yeah,
up? Does
what
it go
is
down?
art?
Or
What's
what is
art
it like?
worth?
You know,
Yeah.
So I don't know. We talked about this in the beginning. You can always make another one.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
I can always make the Desert Oasis room one around. You
Well,
know?
now we're talking.
Yeah, here we go.
Now
Talk
we're
about a
talking.
trade. I want all this shit in here.
There's the trade. There's the trade.
deal, man.
Wow.
Take
wow.
it or leave it.
Wow. Well, what a fun chat with you, David. The really great stories. I appreciate you taking the time to come out here
Oh, thanks for having me.
and joining us on the
I would
Desert
come out
Oasis
here
Room.
with or without a microphone, Adrian.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Get
Well,
out,
we
man.
will definitely do that again.
I was worried I wouldn't have enough to talk about, and now I feel like I've talked too much.
No, this is perfect. This is great.
All right.
This is great. If people want to find your work, where can they find you online?
Find me on Instagram, Lanai Tiki Decor.
Lanai Tiki Decor.
Yeah.
And I know that sometimes
One word, Lanai Tiki Decor. Yep.
sometimes I see you at some of the events.
Yeah, I go to events. I used to vend up in Portland, but TikiCon is no longer. There's going to be a new one up there called the Beachcomber Bash in Ocean Shores, Washington, and I'll be vending at that.
Okay.
But you can always contact me on. I put stuff on Instagram that's available. So if you're interested at all, look on there.
Okay, great. Great.
And I used to do an Etsy thing, but look for me on Instagram. It's more current stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
we'll send our listeners there.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. And for everyone that's listening, thanks for tuning in for another episode of Inside the Desert Oasis Room. If you'd like to listen to our archive, you could find that on the website, desertoasisroom.com. And we also have a YouTube. If you want to follow our adventures, youtube.com/Polynesian Pop. If you want to help support the show, we have a Patreon as well, patreon.com/Polynesian Pop. Thanks again, David. Appreciate it so much.
That was fun, man.
Yeah, it was great.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Let's have a drink.
Give our friend a follow. And yeah, we're going to have a drink right now. All right, party people, until the next time. Cheers and aloha.